Flight attendant mocks a couple of color. 7 minutes later, something unexpected happened to her. A couple approached the boarding gate, and they were expected to have a simple flight. But just a few minutes later, they faced accusations, insults, and were denied seating. Emily Thompson had no idea that her actions were being monitored, and what happened next would profoundly impact the entire airline. Before diving into the story, please share your location in the comments below. And if you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to subscribe. It was supposed to be an ordinary day at the airport. Check-in lines were moving smoothly, and passengers were busy with last-minute texts or a cup of coffee while waiting for their flight at Gate 12. A flight attendant stood next to the boarding pass scanner, her sharp eyes focused intently on the arriving passengers. Her demeanor was very formal, exuding authority that made some people seem a bit anxious. A couple approached the gate, chatting lightly, dressed casually yet neatly, each carrying a tidy handbag. David Carter checked his watch while Michelle Carter glanced back over her shoulder, as if assessing whether they were being watched. Their voices remained steady, and their pace slowed down. However, there was still an underlying confidence in their demeanor. It was a subtle presence that many might not notice. But for Emily Thompson, it sparked a flicker of unease. As they approached the threshold, Emily Thompson raised her hand. "I need to see your boarding passes," she said authoritatively. The couple exchanged a glance and complied immediately. David Carter handed her 2 tickets with a bright smile, with a polite yet reserved attitude. She carefully examined the tickets, her brow furrowing as her gaze shifted from the tickets to the passengers in front of her. "These tickets are for first class," she remarked, her tone even but slightly suspicious. David Carter nodded in affirmation, his voice calm, though there was still a hint of surprise in his response. Michelle Carter, next to him, remained composed, her expression serene yet still alert. Emily Thompson frowned even deeper. "I need a moment to verify this," she said. Turning away without waiting for a reply, she strode purposefully to the podium, her heels echoing on the floor as she typed on the computer. Other passengers began to fidget in line, some trying to catch a glimpse of what was happening. The couple stood still, calm, though Michelle Carter held her handbag a little tighter. When Emily Thompson returned, her expression was inscrutable. "It seems there's an issue with your seating," she announced, her voice loud enough to draw the attention of those around. "I'm afraid I need to ask you to step aside while we resolve this." David appeared to be facing a bigger problem. "I'm afraid I need to ask you to step aside while we resolve this." David Carter tilted his head slightly, his polite smile fading. "What's the issue?" he asked, his tone still calm but firmer. Emily Thompson. She hesitated, glancing at the increasingly impatient crowd of passengers. "It seems there's been a mix-up," she replied vaguely. "I need you to wait there while I consult with the supervisor." Michelle Carter opened her mouth to respond, but David Carter placed his hand on her arm, making her stop. "We will wait," he declared, his gaze still fixed on Emily Thompson. They stepped aside, and the whispers from the other passengers grew louder. Some avoided eye contact, pretending not to notice, while others openly observed, their expressions a mix of curiosity and restlessness. From her position at the gate, Emily Thompson picked up the phone, speaking softly while glancing at the couple. Whatever she was communicating, it was clear the tension in the air was rising. Finally, Michelle Carter leaned in to whisper something to David. Carter, her voice barely audible, he nodded in response, and together they stood up straight, their faces becoming unreadable as the whispers around the gate intensified. Some passengers began pulling out their phones, eager to browse the web while discreetly capturing the unfolding scene. Another airline staff member approached the boarding gate, her calm demeanor contrasted by her quick steps, indicating she was aware this was not standard boarding procedure. Karen Mitchell, experienced in handling customer concerns, walked confidently to the gate. With a determined expression, she approached Emily Thompson, who quickly handed the couple their boarding passes. A brief conversation ensued. Emily Thompson spoke in a soft yet careful tone, gesturing to the couple standing nearby. Karen Mitchell maintained her calm demeanor, her gaze sweeping over the couple before quietly moving closer to them. "I'm Karen Mitchell from this flight," she said politely, extending her hand. "I understand there's been some confusion regarding your seating." David Carter shook her hand, his grip firm but still polite. "There shouldn't be any misunderstanding," he replied. "We booked this seating weeks ago. They are in first class and it's been confirmed." "What seems to be the issue?" Karen Mitchell assessed him for a moment, her professional smile still intact. "Let me verify the system," she said. "I'll resolve this as quickly as possible." She gestured toward a small seating area nearby. "Please take a seat while I sort this out." The couple paused for a moment before moving to the seating area, Michelle Carter leaning closer to David Carter, whispering something in his ear. He nodded again, his expression calm but inscrutable. Around them, other passengers watched intently, some openly recording on their phones. The whispers grew louder as people speculated about the cause of the delay. Meanwhile, at the podium, Karen Mitchell was typing furiously on the computer, while Emily Thompson stood beside her, arms crossed and tense. "I swear something's wrong here," the attendant muttered defensively. "I've dealt with situations like this before. It's wise to be cautious." Karen Mitchell didn't respond immediately, just stared intensely. Finally, she spoke, her voice very calm. "Their tickets are valid. First class isn't overcrowded. There's no reason they shouldn't board." The attendant clenched her jaw. "Are you sure? Have you checked?" "I've checked everything," Karen Mitchell interjected, her tone firm. "There's no issue with their reservation." She turned to the attendant. Emily Thompson hesitated, her mouth moving as if searching for the right words. "I just have a feeling," she finally admitted, her voice softening. "Something's not right." Karen Mitchell looked at her with sharp eyes, an uncomfortable silence. "It just feels that way," she finally admitted, her voice softening. "Something's not right." Karen Mitchell looked at her sharply, an uncomfortable silence settling between them. After a moment, she shook her head. "Feelings aren't a policy," she said coldly. "We're not here to make decisions based on personal instincts. Fix this mistake immediately." Emily Thompson tensed up, her face tightening in frustration. But before she could respond, Karen Mitchell turned back to the couple. She approached them again, this time her expression softer but still professional. "I want to apologize for the inconvenience," she began. "Your tickets are valid, and you are allowed to board. Please follow me." David Carter and the woman exchanged glances. "Thank you," David Carter replied as he stood and picked up his bag. Michelle Carter followed, calm on the outside but gripping her purse tightly. They walked toward the gate led by Karen Mitchell, while Emily Thompson stayed nearby. Behind her face, disappointment and worry showed clearly as the couple checked their boarding passes. Karen Mitchell gave a reassuring smile and whispered, "We'll make sure your experience goes smoothly from now on." Michelle Carter nodded, her expression composed, but her eyes remained sharp, showing the moment still lingered in her mind. After the couple disappeared down the jet bridge, Karen Mitchell turned back to Emily Thompson, her demeanor serious now. "Come with me," she said briefly, not waiting for an answer. She led Emily to a more private spot behind the counter, Emily following with stiff posture, clearly anxious. Once out of earshot of passengers, Karen Mitchell faced her. "What were you thinking?" she asked quietly but firmly. Emily hesitated, eyes downcast. "I told you," she replied defensively. "I just had a feeling something wasn't right." "A feeling, didn't?" Karen Mitchell echoed skeptically. "You delayed boarding over a feeling? Do you understand the consequences? You just failed your duty." As Emily started to speak, her words were cut off by the sudden ring of the doorbell. Karen Mitchell turned to answer it, her expression shifting as she listened carefully. Her response was, "Yes, understood." I'll handle it. After hanging up, she faced Emily again, her face tired but determined. That was the operations office, she said coldly. They received a complaint about this incident, and there's a video going viral online. You're being reported for this. Emily's expression went blank, her face losing all color as she faced the accusation. I didn't, she began, but her voice grew frustrated. You think what you're doing doesn't matter? Karen Mitchell interrupted sharply. What matters is the perception. And right now, the situation looks really bad, very bad. Someone from the company will definitely reach out to you, and I advise you to carefully consider your words. Before Emily Thompson could respond, Karen Mitchell turned and walked away, leaving her alone at the gate. As passengers continued to board the plane, she felt curious glances, a sense of vulnerability creeping into her thoughts. She realized this situation was much more serious than she had initially thought. The noise in the boarding area gradually faded as the last passengers boarded. Emily Thompson remained at the counter, her eyes glued to the computer screen, her hands slightly shaking as she pretended to be busy with the usual tasks. In reality, her mind was in chaos, focused on the implications of mentioning discrimination and the call from the operations office that had shaken her confidence, leaving her uncertain about what was about to happen on the plane. The couple settled into first class. David Carter leaned back slightly, adjusting his tie, while Michelle Carter carefully stowed her handbag under the seat in front. Around them, other passengers seemed restless, many looking at them with longing gazes. The atmosphere felt tense. Even though the crew was performing pre-flight procedures accurately, the couple remained silent, their demeanor unchanged despite the unease surrounding them. After the stressful situation they had just faced at the gate, Emily Thompson was taken aback when she heard her name called. She turned to see Karen Mitchell approaching her again, this time accompanied by a man in a suit. He held a clipboard and wore a badge indicating he was an employee of the company. Her heart sank as he introduced himself. We've been informed about the incident, he stated in a tone that was both professional and assertive. We need to talk to you right now. Karen Mitchell gestured toward a nearby small meeting room. The three of them entered the room, and as soon as the door closed, David Carter got straight to the point. He said, I've gone over the initial reports and spoken with witnesses. Clearly, this situation could have been handled much better. Emily Thompson opened her mouth to respond, but he raised his hand to signal her to be quiet. At this point, we're not here to justify what happened. We need to focus on understanding why it occurred. I'm just following procedure. Emily Thompson quickly interjected, I think there might have been an issue with their tickets. So, did you confirm that their tickets were invalid before stopping them? David Carter interrupted, and Emily Thompson hesitated, her throat dry. No, but did they show any signs of causing trouble or violating airline policy? No, she reluctantly admitted. So what exactly drove you to stop them? His tone was even but somewhat harsh, making her feel uncomfortable. Emily Thompson stammered, trying to express her thoughts. I felt unwell, she finally said, her voice barely audible. David Carter leaned forward, his expression tense. Let me be clear. These personal feelings do not justify denying service. Your actions today not only hindered the boarding process, but also created a situation that tarnishes this airline's reputation. Passengers have shared their experiences online, and this is quickly drawing attention. This is a significant concern. A wave of realization washed over Emily Thompson. She tried to respond but couldn't find the words. The seriousness of his statement sank in, and for the first time, she began to understand the full impact of her actions. David Carter stood up, pointing out his conclusions. The conversation revealed that she was being suspended immediately while an investigation took place. He said she would receive further instructions as he and Karen Mitchell left the room. Emily Thompson sat there, her eyes fixed on the table. In front of her, struggling with the weight of the situation, this was not just about a single choice. It encompassed everything that choice represented. And now she had to face the consequences. Sitting in the small conference room, her head resting in her hands. She was overwhelmed by the sounds around her. The lively atmosphere of the reports outside the door felt so far away, almost stifled. She replayed the events in her mind, trying to understand why everything had happened so quickly. Her feelings at the time seemed justified, but now they were under scrutiny from her superiors, making her feel vulnerable. Meanwhile, on the flight, the couple sat in silence. Michelle Carter flipped through a magazine while David Carter typed on his laptop, both exuding an air of calm detachment. However, anyone observing closely could see they were not ignoring the incident. As they processed the situation, Emily Thompson, assigned to the first-class cabin, approached with a hesitant smile. "Can I get you anything before we take off?" she asked politely. David Carter shook his head, replying, "We're fine. Thank you." His tone was unwavering. Michelle Carter nodded politely but remained silent. Emily Thompson stopped, sensing the underlying tension, but ultimately continued to assist other nearby passengers. Whispers and envious glances continued while the couple maintained their composure. Still, the heavy atmosphere of the earlier confrontation lingered. Karen Mitchell returned to her desk, her expression tense with frustration. She scrolled through her tablet, updating information about the situation. Stephen Walsh had left, but the fallout continued. Passengers' social media posts spread rapidly, some even tagging the airline's official accounts. A flurry of comments criticized Emily Thompson's behavior and demanded she be held accountable. Karen Mitchell sighed deeply. She had witnessed escalations like this before, but this time it felt particularly concerning. The calm demeanor of the couple, along with the presence of witnesses, made it difficult for Emily Thompson to justify her actions. Worse, the company's office had gotten involved, impacting the airline's reputation. Inside the airplane, the crew was preparing for departure. The pilot's voice came over the intercom, confirming that the flight would depart on schedule. As the engines began to roar, the couple exchanged a glance. David Carter leaned closer to Michelle Carter and whispered something to her. She nodded, her expression enigmatic before turning away. She returned her focus to the magazine as the plane taxied toward the runway. The tension from the earlier incident at the gate seemed to still hang in the air, an unspoken current spreading throughout the cabin. Passengers who witnessed the scene glanced at the couple, some showing sympathy, others curiosity. However, the couple remained unfazed, their calm demeanor intact. Meanwhile, Emily Thompson at the gate felt the weight of the suspension pressing down on her. She sat alone, waiting for further instructions, her thoughts swirling. She knew the incident had been recorded and could picture the consequences. She never expected the fallout to happen so quickly and that her life would soon change so drastically. The plane soared effortlessly into the sky while passengers settled comfortably in their seats. The steady sound of the engines and the gentle vibrations of the air enveloped the cabin. The couple in first class remained silent, their composed appearance betraying unspoken worries. Michelle Carter adjusted her scarf and looked out the window, while David Carter closed his laptop and leaned back in his seat. Their calm demeanor was a stark contrast to the whispers still circulating among the other passengers. A passenger sitting in the aisle across leaned forward slightly. "Excuse me," he said quietly, careful not to draw attention. "I saw what happened at the gate. Are you two okay?" David Carter turned his head, offering a polite yet firm smile. "We're fine. Thank you," he replied. Michelle Carter nodded in agreement, her expression gentle but cautious. Sensing their reluctance to share more, the passenger leaned back, although curiosity was still evident. As the flight continued, the couple's composure seemed to be more calculated than initially perceived. David Carter gently pulled out his phone, tapping the screen before handing it to Michelle Carter. She quickly skimmed through the message he had composed, her lips pressing together slightly before she nodded silently. He sent it without hesitation. They understood this was not just their trip. The issue at hand was facing a bigger problem. Their actions were intentional. Every move was meticulously planned, as if they were playing a game they wanted to conquer. Meanwhile, back at the airport, The situation was unfolding faster than expected. Stephen Walsh, who, earlier, Emily Thompson had met with her team in her office to coordinate damage control with the airline's executive team. Social media was flooded with posts from witnesses at the gate. Some described in detail the interaction, highlighting the calm professionalism of the couple, in contrast to Emily Thompson's condescending tone. Others shared videos that quickly went viral. One particular clip captured Emily Thompson questioning the couple. The validity of their tickets was in doubt, her tone harsh and condescending. While the couple responded politely yet firmly, the intense backlash came swiftly as many accused the airline of discrimination and demanded immediate action. Richard Hayes, the airline's CEO, was informed, sitting in his sleek, modern office. He watched the videos with a grim expression. "This is unacceptable," he murmured to himself. He Chiri picked up the phone and instructed his assistant, "Call Karen Mitchell at gate 12. I want a full report on this incident, and I want it now." Back at the airport, Karen Mitchell was still at her desk when her phone rang. She answered quickly, her voice calm despite the mounting pressure. The conversation with the CEO was brief and to the point. After hanging up, she returned to her tablet, searching for every detail she could find about Emily Thompson, the passengers, and the timeline of events. She understood that any action the CEO decided to take would be swift and decisive. Inside the small conference room where Emily Thompson was sitting, she was asked to wait. The atmosphere felt tense. She crossed her arms tightly, staring at the blank wall in front of her. The phone on the table buzzed, but she chose to ignore it, not wanting to face the wave of notifications and messages she was expecting. The severity of her mistake was becoming clear. What she initially thought was a minor misunderstanding had quickly escalated into a public relations crisis for the airline that she was leading. Finally, the conference room door opened, and Karen Mitchell walked in with a tense expression. She closed the door behind her and sat down across from Emily Thompson, arms crossed on the table. "You need to understand the seriousness of this," Karen Mitchell began, her voice low but firm. "The executive office is involved, and the CEO himself is concerned about the gravity of this situation," Karen Mitchell continued, her tone still low but resolute. "The executive office is involved, and the CEO himself is concerned about this situation." Emily Thompson swallowed hard. "I didn't mean to make things worse," she said, her voice trembling. "I think you misunderstood." Karen Mitchell interrupted. "Whatever you think, it doesn't align with policy or procedure. You acted on impulse, and now we are facing intense public backlash." Emily Thompson looked down, desperation evident in her voice. "I didn't intend to discriminate. I felt that was wrong." Karen Mitchell's gaze sharpened. "Do you understand how that sounds? Emotions aren't part of your job description. You're here to follow the process and treat every passenger fairly and with respect. That's it." Emily Thompson leaned back in her chair, her face growing weary. "What now?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Karen Mitchell sighed and leaned back in her chair. "You are officially suspended until further investigation. The company will handle things from here." Emily Thompson felt a sinking feeling in her chest. She had expected this outcome, but hearing it confirmed made everything feel too real. She started to voice her objections, but fell silent when she saw the determined look on Karen Mitchell's face. There was nothing left to argue about. As Karen Mitchell stood up to leave, she paused at the door. "I suggest you prepare yourself," she warned. "This won't end quietly. No more words." She walked away. She left Emily Thompson grappling with the seriousness of her choices and the fast-approaching consequences. At 30,000 feet, the couple exchanged glances once more. David Carter nodded slightly, while Michelle Carter maintained her calm demeanor and reached for her phone. With a steady gesture, she sent a message, her action reflecting the composure she had shown throughout the day. Things were starting to unfold, and the repercussions of previous events were still unresolved. As the plane glided smoothly at 30,000 feet, the atmosphere in the cabin felt entirely different. as conversations among passengers shifted in tone. The first-class passengers seemed unusually calm, some looking at the couple with envy, while others quietly discussed the earlier incident. However, this couple remained composed, exuding a sense of strong control. It wasn't arrogance, it was determination. They understood that the flight was just the beginning of something bigger. David Carter adjusted his position in his seat, checking his phone as a new notification popped up. His lips pressed together in thought. "It's spreading," he whispered. She gently told Michelle Carter, leaning forward as her eyes scanned the screen. The video of their encounter at the gate had garnered thousands of views and was widely shared. Comments flooded in, condemning the airline while praising the couple's composure in a tough situation. Some users tagged news outlets, while others directed their anger at the airline's official social media accounts. Calling for accountability, Michelle Carter leaned back, her expression serene yet resolute, softly saying, "This is no longer about us. It's bigger than that now." David Carter nodded slightly, affirming that this would lead to something important. He responded in a firm tone, placing his phone down and glancing toward the aisle. A flight attendant approached them with an uncertain look. She stopped at their row, holding a tray with 2 glasses of soda, a courtesy from the airline. "We apologize for any inconvenience you've experienced," she said, her tone polite but tense. The couple looked at each other for a moment before David Carter nodded to accept the glass. "Thank you," he simply said, his voice still calm. Michelle Carter remained silent, her attention now focused on the window as she stared at the clouds outside. Emily Thompson paused, seemingly waiting for more. But when it became clear that the conversation was over, she turned and walked away. At the back of the plane, the consequences of the incident were equally noticeable. With economy class passengers also having witnessed the scene at the gate and whispering among themselves, a woman leaned close to the person next to her and whispered, "Did you see what just happened?" The couple did not. There was nothing wrong at all. Clearly, her seatmate had agreed. "I happened to overhear someone mention their significant online presence, and if that was accurate, this could cause serious trouble for the airline." Conversations among passengers changed tone. First-class travelers remained unusually calm. Some looked at the couple with longing, while others, they quietly talked about what had happened earlier. But the couple stayed calm, showing a strong sense of control. It wasn't arrogance, it was determination. They understood the flight was just the beginning of something bigger. David Carter adjusted his seat, checked his phone as a new notification appeared. Lips pressed thoughtfully. "It's spreading," he whispered. She softly spoke to Michelle Carter, leaning forward as her eyes scanned the screen. The video of their encounter at the gate had drawn thousands of views and been widely shared. Comments flooded in, condemning the airline while praising the couple's calmness in a tough situation. Some tagged news outlets, while others vented their anger at the airline's official social media accounts. Demanding accountability, Michelle Carter leaned back, her face peaceful yet firm, and said softly, "This isn't just about us anymore. It's bigger than that now." David Carter nodded weakly. "Sure, this would lead to something important," he replied in a firm tone, put his phone down, and glanced toward the aisle. A flight attendant approached them, Kutum, looking uncertain. She stopped at their row, holding a tray with 2 sodas, a polite gesture from the airline. "We apologize for any inconvenience you've experienced," she said, her voice polite but tense. The couple exchanged looks before David Carter nodded and took the drink. "Thank you," he said simply, his voice still calm. Michelle Carter remained silent, her attention turning back to the window as she stared at the clouds outside. Emily Thompson paused, seeming to wait for more. But when it was clear the conversation was over, she turned and walked away. At the back of the plane, the fallout from the incident was just as noticeable, with many economy passengers witnessing the scene at the gate and whispering among themselves. A woman leaned toward her neighbor and whispered, "Did you see what just happened?" The couple didn't. Nothing was wrong. Clearly, her seatmate agreed. "I overheard someone mention their significant online presence. And if that's true, This could cause serious trouble for the airline. Meanwhile, back on the ground, the consequences were quickly escalating inside the airline's office. The communications team was in crisis mode. Screens filled with angry social media posts. A video titled "Couple Humiliated at Gate, Discriminated Against in Plain Sight" had over 100 views. Within an hour, several influencers had spread the story, greatly increasing its visibility. Sitting at the head of a long conference table, CEO Michael Reynolds looked frustrated as he reviewed updates. "What's the status of the staff involved?" he asked sharply. "She's been suspended," James Larson replied, rifling through papers. "She's been removed from duty pending investigation." And the passengers, Hayes pressed. "They're still on the flight." Another executive chimed in. "But we've received multiple complaints from other passengers. Witnesses say the situation is escalating." Mr. Hayes rubbed his temples and declared, "I want a full report before the plane lands, including all witness statements and any footage we can gather. We have to control the story before it gets out of hand." Meanwhile, the suspended flight attendant sat quietly, her mind racing with anxiety. Her phone buzzed again, but she couldn't bring herself to answer. She anticipated messages from coworkers checking in about the incident and social media updates. Posts mentioned her name and updates she wished to avoid. What was once a proud career now felt uncertain. For the first time, she allowed herself to wonder if she'd made a mistake, a real one that couldn't be fixed. As the plane began to land, the captain's voice came over the intercom with routine instructions. The couple buckled up, their expressions unreadable. Michelle Carter glanced at her phone one last time, then put it away. As the plane touched down smoothly on the runway, she exchanged a brief look with David Carter. Their silence said a lot. Both knew the next steps were already in motion. Back at the gate, airline representatives gathered near the jet bridge with faces. They both understood that the next steps had been set. Back at the jet bridge, airline representatives gathered near the gate with tense expressions. The CEO had emphasized that this couple must receive the highest level of care upon landing. A senior manager stood at the front, quietly practicing his words. "We deeply regret this incident," he mumbled to himself, imagining the couple's reaction. Behind him, other staff members moved awkwardly. They were fully aware of the situation. They marked the unusual appearance as the plane's door opened and passengers began to disembark. Many curiously looked at the couple in first class. Michelle Carter remained seated, her calm demeanor waiting patiently, while David Carter stood up to gather their carry-on luggage, arranging it carefully in the aisle. When they finally exited the plane, Thomas Bradley approached, his expression both calm and anxious. "Welcome," he said, extending his hand. "We are here to assist with any needs you have." David Carter shook his hand but did not respond. Michelle Carter glanced quickly at the group of staff. Her demeanor was calm but firm. "We'll talk soon," she said gently, her tone resolute and unwavering. The group dispersed, exchanging worried looks as they stepped aside. The couple's silence conveyed so much, having a greater impact than any outburst. As they left the terminal, David Carter glanced at his phone. A slight smile appeared on his face. "The CEO wants to meet," he informed her. Michelle Carter nodded, her expression still composed. "Good," she replied. "Make sure this is accounted for." The couple left the airport together. They remained as calm as they were when the incident began. A black car was waiting for them just outside the terminal, and Robert Ellis, a middle-aged man with a professional demeanor, greeted them with a subtle nod as he opened the door. They quietly slid into the back seat, now focused on what was about to happen. Inside the car, David Carter took out his phone and began typing. The screen filled with notifications, on and on. News outlets seeking interviews, advocacy groups, and numerous strangers praising their kindness under pressure. Under pressure, he forwarded some important messages to Michelle Carter, who listened silently before responding to a specific message. The airline's CEO had called for an emergency meeting, stressing the desire to address the situation personally. "He's trying to get ahead of this," she said softly, her tone measured. David Carter nodded. He understood that the longer this incident stayed in the public eye, the more unfavorable it would become. They wanted to portray this as an isolated incident, not a systemic issue. He leaned back in his seat, his expression thoughtful. Michelle Carter acknowledged with a slight nod that they needed to ensure this wouldn't be overlooked. She declared, "This is not about an apology. This is about real responsibility." As their car drove through the city streets, the consequences of this challenge remained evident. Meanwhile, at the airline's headquarters, a crisis management team was gathered in a glass-walled conference room. A large screen displayed a real-time social media feed, filled with posts and comments about the incident. Some people expressed outrage, calling for a boycott of the airline, while others shared their own experiences of discrimination, praising the couple for their calmness and grace. A group of celebrities joined in, making the debate even more heated and ensuring that it would not fade into obscurity. Richard Hayes, the CEO, sat at the head of the table, looking displeased as he reviewed the latest developments. "How long until the media catches wind of this?" he asked sharply. Rachel Coleman replied, "They're already preparing their articles. Some media outlets have requested a statement from us. We've issued a standard acknowledgement and commitment to investigate. But that won't stop the backlash for long. The couple Hayes inquired about has confirmed the meeting." His assistant nodded, signaling that they had agreed to meet this afternoon at the office. They made it clear they wanted more than just an apology. Hayes clenched his jaw, but he nodded. "Good. We'll give them more. I want to address this issue today." Meanwhile, at the airport, Emily Thompson, who sparked the controversy, was becoming increasingly panicked as her suspension was officially enacted. She had been asked to leave until further notice. As she walked through the terminal towards the exit, she felt the eyes of other staff and passengers on her. Whispers echoed behind her. Though no one was brave enough to speak directly to her, her phone buzzed in her pocket again. And finally, she mustered the courage to open it. The notifications hadn't changed. Angry tweets mentioned her name. Videos were now circulating on major media, and messages from strangers, some showing support. Most importantly, her stomach churned as she scrolled through the website. Each post felt like a nail sealing her career. For the first time, she began to realize the gravity of her mistake. She had thought she was trusting her instincts, but now those instincts left her completely vulnerable. In the car, the couple arrived at their destination, a luxury office building in downtown. They stepped out, expressing gratitude to Robert Ellis, and walked inside. In the lobby, an assistant from the CEO's office awaited them, looking somewhat anxious. She welcomed them professionally and said, "Mr. Hayes is on his way." She mentioned that he was eager to address their concerns personally. David Carter and the woman exchanged glances before following her into the private meeting room. The space was quiet and minimalist, with large windows overlooking the bustling city below. Sarah offered them drinks, but they declined before stepping outside to ensure privacy. They didn't have to wait long. A few minutes later, Michael Reynolds entered, his polite demeanor barely concealing the tension in his posture. He extended his hand to shake hands with each person, his voice calm yet sincere. "Thank you for agreeing to meet on such short notice," he said. "I want to start with my deepest apologies for what happened today. It is unacceptable, and I take full responsibility for my employees' actions." David Carter nodded in acknowledgement but remained silent. Michelle Carter leaned slightly forward, her gaze unwavering. "We appreciate the apology," she said firmly. "However, I'm sure you know that the issue isn't just about what happened to us. The problem is the environment that allowed this to happen." Hayes's jaw tightened slightly, but he nodded. "You are absolutely right," he said. "That's why we are taking immediate steps to address systemic issues within our organization. We have begun reviewing our training program and are planning to implement mandatory sensitivity and bias training for all staff. Additionally, We are revising our policies to ensure that incidents like this are handled appropriately in the future. Michelle Carter's expression remained unchanged. Words are easy, she said. We need to see action, a clear timeline, measurable outcomes, and transparency regarding the changes you're making. Anything less is just an attempt to minimize damage. Hayes nodded again, his expression serious. I assure you this will not be overlooked. I will personally oversee the implementation of these changes and provide regular updates on our progress. I want to work with you to ensure we achieve the desired results. David Carter spoke up for the first time, his tone steady but firm. We will hold you to that, he stated. This is not just about us. This is about everyone who has faced unfair mistreatment due to deep-seated biases. If you are truly committed to addressing this issue, we will support you. But if it's just empty words, he paused, the implicit warning clear. Hayes adjusted his demeanor. Resolute, he affirmed that this wasn't just talk. You will see. The couple shared one last look before standing up. We will be watching, Michelle Carter stated clearly. They left without saying another word, leaving Hayes alone, the gravity of the situation weighing upon him. As they exited the building, Michelle Carter turned to David Carter. Can you believe it? She asked, and he paused to reflect before responding. Let's wait and see. He added, but if they don't follow through, we'll make sure the whole world knows. As the couple stepped out of the building, they breathed in the fresh afternoon air, both understanding that this meeting was just the beginning. The CEO's words were purposefully chosen. But if it's just talk, then the past can't be changed or guaranteed to create significant change. They got into the waiting car, the door closing gently behind them. David Carter took out his phone once again. Scrolling through the screen, a series of continuous updates rolled in as the discussion continued. His tone remained neutral but firm, indicating that this issue wouldn't be resolved quickly. Michelle Carter acknowledged this as she looked at her phone, where news outlets began reporting on the story. Headlines like "Flight Attendant Refuses to Let Black Couple Board" and outrage-inducing videos were trending. Some celebrities voiced their opinions, calling for action not just from the airline, but from the entire aviation industry. Some users shared their personal experiences with discrimination, while others demanded justice for the couple. Michelle Carter's gaze remained fixed on a post that read, "This is not a one-off incident. This reflects a system that has long overdue for change." She looked away from the screen, her voice steady but determined. We have to make sure this doesn't fade away. If they are truly committed to making changes, then that's fine. But if they think they can just apologize and move on, then they're mistaken. David Carter nodded, his expression thoughtful. We have momentum now, he said. Let's make it count. Meanwhile, back in the airline's corporate office, Richard Hayes had gathered his team. The meeting with the couple had served as an important wake-up call. Their calm but assertive demands eliminated any chance for complacency. And he understood that if the airline didn't respond swiftly and effectively, the consequences would be dire. This is what I need, Hayes declared, speaking to the executives gathered in the meeting room. I want a comprehensive review of our policies and training materials completed by the end of the week. We will immediately implement mandatory training on bias and sensitivity. Not just for flight attendants, but for all staff, from top to bottom. I hope to make a public statement tonight. Rachel Coleman hesitated, suggesting that while this statement was a good start, she warned that without real action, the situation could worsen. People will see through that. No vague promises, only clear steps and timelines. And I want updates sent directly to the couple. Hayes nodded slightly, affirming that this statement must come with a plan of action. This isn't just a public relations issue. It has to be genuine. As the team left, Hayes stayed in the room, glued to the large screen, monitoring. The ongoing social media frenzy, the backlash showed no signs of fading, and the footage of the incident at the gate continued to circulate. He had no choice but to respond. His reputation and the future of the airline industry depended on it. Meanwhile, Emily Thompson, who had been swept up in the controversy, sat isolated in her apartment. The curtains were drawn. Only the light from the TV illuminated the room. She stared at the screen, her heart racing as the host detailed the events unfolding. A video replay of her conversation with the couple aired, showing her sharp and contemptuous tone as she questioned their tickets. Next came the footage of the couple boarding the plane, calm and composed despite clearly being humiliated. The host's tone was very calm as she reported that the airline had issued a preliminary apology and suspended the involved staff while awaiting an investigation. However, critics were demanding broader accountability, viewing this incident as a sign of systemic issues within the airline industry. Emily Thompson muted the TV and sat in front of it, unable to focus any longer. Her phone buzzed on the table, but she chose to ignore it, fully aware of the content of the messages. Some colleagues had reached out offering support, while others seemed distant. A few friends had called, but she couldn't bring herself to answer. The weight of shame and regret felt unbearable, and she feared facing their questions. Deep down, she realized her actions were a mistake. She had acted impulsively, and now both her career and a life felt out of control. She hesitated before opening her laptop and logging into the airline system. The internal portal displayed her suspension notice, along with instructions for a mandatory meeting with human resources. The words on the screen felt certain, like the final page of a story she never intended to tell. She leaned back, gazing at the ceiling, the burden of her choices weighing down on her. As she accepted the reality of her situation, the couple at home was strategizing their next steps. They spread documents and notes on the kitchen table, considering the larger consequences of their experience. It was no longer just about them. The issue was confronting a system that allowed incidents like this to continue. Michelle Carter asserted firmly, "This can't just stop with us. People go through this every day, and most lack the background or resources to fight back." David Carter nodded, tapping his pen on the table. He replied, "We need to expand this beyond just one airline. They could enact changes, but what about the rest of the industry? What about those who don't have a camera to document their experiences?" Michelle Carter leaned in, closer. Her gaze was sharp as she began outlining the airline's action plan. "We hold them accountable step by step, and then we push them to do even more," David Carter commented. Carter smiled softly, his voice filled with determination. "They didn't realize they were starting something big," he noted. As night fell, the couple worked, late into the night, drafting emails detailing their strategies and connecting with people who could help amplify their mission. For them, this incident was not the end, but the beginning of something much greater. As the city lights twinkled outside and morning sunlight illuminated the city, it was clear that the struggle for change was just beginning. Spirited discussions about the airline incident unfolded as news outlets ramped up their coverage, offering increasingly critical headlines. A popular national morning show featured a segment with a panel of experts delving into the issue of discrimination in the customer service industry. Clips of the gate interaction were replayed alongside statistics highlighting racial bias in customer-facing roles, while the hosts shared their insights. Outrage was palpable, and by the end of the show, the airline's name had become synonymous with the controversy. The couple watched in silence, their faces betraying no emotion. Michelle Carter took a sip of coffee while scrolling on her phone. Meanwhile, David Carter focused on his laptop. "This is gaining attention," he finally remarked, looking up. "We're getting messages from advocacy groups wanting to know how they can support us." Michelle Carter nodded in agreement. "Now it's even bigger than the airline," she replied, her voice calm as she set her coffee cup down. "That's exactly our goal, to make sure they remember the reason behind this. Their resolve is clear, but the consequences extend beyond their headquarters." The CEO's workday had started many hours earlier with a series of back-to-back meetings. Richard Hayes, typically a confident leader, now felt as if he were trying to patch a sinking ship. Every time he resolved one issue, Another would arise. The public relations team was overwhelmed. The operations team was scrambling to adjust training protocols, and the legal team was warning of potential lawsuits if the couple decided to escalate the matter. Hayes sat at the head of the table in the executive meeting room. His expression was tense as he reviewed the draft of the public statement expected to be released by the end of the day. Rachel Coleman was speaking, but her words barely registered in his thoughts. He was preoccupied with the couple. Their calm yet firm demands from yesterday's meeting lingered in his mind, and he realized that their expectations had risen. If the airline's response isn't good, the consequences could be severe. The fallout will be catastrophic. Sir, the spokesperson warned. The communications director chimed in, brushing aside his worries. We need your approval to release this information. He glanced down at the report once more and scanned through it quickly. This apology was vague, promising an investigation and improvements without providing any specific details. He bluntly stated that this was not enough and pushed the document back across the table. They wanted action. We need to show that we are serious. The room fell silent as the CEO spoke cautiously. What do you propose? I want a comprehensive action plan. Hayes emphasized that the need should go beyond just sensitivity training. He called for a comprehensive approach to passenger interactions, establishing tighter decision-making protocols and clear penalties for staff who violate those protocols. He emphasized that this information must be disclosed alongside the statement. Rachel Coleman expressed concern, noting that revealing such details could draw more attention and potentially lead to admissions of wrongdoing. Hayes responded with a sharp look, asserting, "We are at fault. The only way forward is to acknowledge our mistakes and make the necessary corrections." Back on the flight, on a business trip, the weight of the situation was becoming undeniable. She had spent the entire night immersed in messages and social media updates, each one more damaging than the last. Although her name had not yet been released, it was only a matter of time. She had tried to draft an apology, but each time she started typing, the words felt empty. What could she say that wouldn't come off as an excuse? Her reflection was interrupted by an email notification from the airline's HR department requesting a formal meeting to discuss her suspension. Amid the ongoing investigation, the email conveyed professionalism. However, the underlying message was unmistakable. Her future with the airline was very uncertain. She stared at the screen, her hands trembling. For years, she had prided herself on being a capable and skilled employee, but now, that sense of self was crumbling. Over time, this couple had worked hard behind the scenes, drafting an open letter not just aimed at the airline, but at the entire aviation industry, advocating for fundamental changes in how passengers are treated. The letter outlined their demands: mandatory awareness training for all staff, clear policies to address complaints, and consequences for discriminatory behavior. They intended to publish this information online and distribute it to the media. David Carter stated as they reviewed the draft, "This isn't about tearing them down. It's about holding them and others accountable to improve." Michelle Carter agreed with a firm attitude. People need to understand that they can no longer escape responsibility. By midday, the airline had issued a public statement acknowledging the incident, expressing regret to the couple, and detailing the swift actions being taken to address the issue. The statement included a commitment to mandatory training and a promise of transparency throughout the investigation process. Social media exploded with reactions as some praised the airline for its accountability, while others deemed the response insufficient and delayed. The couple had carefully considered the statement. Their expressions revealed no emotion. Michelle Carter eventually remarked that this was a start, but still not enough. David Carter agreed and added, "We will make sure they follow through on this." After he clicked the publish button on the open letter, it quickly spread online. Advocacy groups shared it widely and praising this couple for turning a negative experience into a powerful call for change. The feedback they received was mostly positive as individuals from different backgrounds shared their own experiences of bias and discrimination. When the letter gained attention, the airline executives quickly responded. Hayes read the letter in his office. His teeth clenched. He acknowledged that the couple was right in stating their case. The initial measures proved to be ineffective. He picked up the phone, called his assistant, and urged them to pick up. "We need another meeting." He insisted. Sarah hesitated. "Sir, they've already sent the letter. It spread very quickly." Hayes sighed, showing clear frustration. "Then we need to act faster. I want a meeting scheduled by the end of the day. No delays." As the sun began to set, the couple leaned back, watching their letter take on a life of its own. It wasn't about revenge or personal gain for them. It was about ensuring that no one else would face the challenges they had endured. And, as the world watched, it was clear that their quiet resilience had ignited a movement larger than anyone expected. Airline CEO Michael Reynolds was still in his office late into the night, focused on the open letter displayed on his computer screen. The couple's requests were very straightforward, direct, and reasonable. They weren't seeking financial compensation, nor were they making personal accusations. Instead, they highlighted systemic issues and advocated for comprehensive reforms. This wasn't just about flight attendants or a single incident. It pointed to a larger cultural change that was needed. Hayes understood that this wasn't just about appearances. The goal was to protect the airline's reputation and integrity. He picked up the phone and dialed the number his assistant had given him. After a few rings, a calm and steady voice answered. "I'm David. Mr. Carter," Hayes began, maintaining a professional tone. "I want to personally thank you for the open letter. It was clear, actionable, and well thought out. I'd like the opportunity for us to meet again to discuss how we can integrate your proposals into our reforms." After a moment of silence, David replied, "We're willing to meet, but we're not interested in superficial changes. If this is just for show, then there's no point in continuing." Hayes sighed and leaned back in his chair, saying, "I understand your skepticism," he admitted, "but I promise you this is not just about managing perceptions. We genuinely want to make meaningful changes, and I value your input to ensure we get it right." David glanced at his wife sitting nearby. Sitting across from him at the dining table, she nodded slightly, her expression cautious yet supportive. "Finally," he said, "we will meet, David, but this is your opportunity to prove your commitment. Don't waste it." The meeting was set for the following afternoon at the couple's office. Hayes ended the call, feeling relieved but still aware that the real effort was just beginning. Meanwhile, the airline's internal investigation was still underway. The suspended flight attendant had been summoned for an interview with Human Resources, where she had to sit and wait in a sterile conference room, illuminated by the harsh light of fluorescent lamps. Her palms were sweaty and her voice trembled as she answered the investigator's questions. "I didn't mean to discriminate," she said defensively. "I was just trying to do my job." Laura Bennett, a calm woman with a straightforward attitude, raised an eyebrow. She remarked that it was your responsibility to follow protocol. According to the report, their tickets were valid, their behavior was very respectful, and there was no reason to deny them boarding. "Can you clearly explain why you questioned them?" Emily Thompson hesitated, her throat dry. "I think there might have been a misunderstanding," she said weakly. There was something wrong in this situation. Laura Bennett's expression remained unchanged. "Your personal feelings about a situation are not a basis for action. Your decision led to a serious incident that harmed the airline's reputation. We need to understand exactly why you made that choice," Emily Thompson stammered, trying to justify her actions. As the questions continued, and as the discussion unfolded, she began to realize that there was no legitimate reason that could justify her actions. She had acted based on an assumption influenced by bias, and now she was facing the consequences. When the meeting concluded, she clearly saw that her prospects with the airline were very bleak. Meanwhile, the couple was preparing for their upcoming meeting with Hayes. They had spent the entire day gathering more data on systemic problem cases in the industry, determined to pursue broader reforms. As they reviewed their findings, Michelle Carter leaned back in her chair. Their expressions were pensive as they debated with each other. She remarked that they understood the issue was not limited to one employee. If they didn't address this issue, the entire industry would suffer the consequences. David nodded in agreement, clearly stating that this was exactly what needed to happen. As the evening wore on, their letter continued to gain attention online as more passengers shared their own experiences of similar treatment. Their voices united in an increasing demand for change, prompting advocacy groups to support this couple and harnessing the momentum to push for widespread reform. Many industries had witnessed transformation starting from a single event at a boarding gate, and then quickly evolving into a significant movement. Airline executives recognized this change with urgency. Richard Hayes called an emergency meeting with showing similar treatment. Their voices united in a growing call for change, fueling advocacy groups supporting this couple and leveraging momentum to push for broader reform. Many industries saw shifts begin from a single event at the boarding gate, then quickly grow into a significant movement. Airline executives recognized this change as urgent. Richard Hayes called an emergency meeting with his senior leadership that evening, outlining a strategy to accelerate reform. "We can't hesitate anymore," he asserted. "We have to act now, or this will define us forever." As the couple went to sleep, they understood they had sparked a movement bigger than themselves, and they were determined to follow through on that commitment. For the first time since the incident, they allowed themselves a brief, quiet moment of satisfaction. Yet, they knew the struggle wasn't over. Change would take time, persistence, and responsibility, and they were determined to make sure it happened. The next day, the couple arrived at the office early to prepare for their meeting with Richard Hayes. The documents and notes they had meticulously organized late into the night were neatly laid out on the conference table. Michelle Carter adjusted her jacket, her demeanor calm yet resolute. As David glanced at the clock, he gently said, "They'll be here any minute." A few minutes later, Richard Hayes walked in with two senior executives, his demeanor very calm, but the seriousness of the situation was evident in his posture. As he entered the room, he extended his hand. "Thank you for meeting with us," he said. "We appreciate the opportunity to continue this discussion." Michelle Carter gestured toward the table and invited them to sit down. "Let's get started," she said clearly. "No small talk. No pleasantries. The atmosphere is both professional and serious." Hayes began by naming the airlines. "We have taken immediate action to address the incident, including implementing mandatory sensitivity training for all staff. This training includes flight attendants, gate agents, and even senior management. Additionally, we are revising our protocols to ensure that decisions are made based on clear, objective criteria rather than personal judgment." David nodded but remained silent. Michelle Carter leaned forward, her voice calm yet assertive. "That's a start," she declared, "but just training alone won't solve the issue. You need accountability. What happens when an employee violates these protocols? What measures are being put in place to ensure accountability?" Hayes exchanged a glance with his team before responding. "We are implementing a tiered accountability system. Violations will trigger immediate reviews, and repeated offenses could lead to termination. Furthermore, we are creating a new reporting system to ensure that incidents like this can be identified and addressed swiftly." David leaned back in his chair, a thoughtful expression on his face. "What about the passengers?" he asked. "What systems apply to them? What measures are being taken to ensure that passengers can voice their concerns in such incidents?" James Larson addressed this issue, stating, "We are improving our passenger feedback channels to make them more accessible. Additionally, we are committed to enhancing transparency regarding complaint handling. Every complaint will be reviewed by an independent panel, and passengers will receive updates throughout the process." The couple exchanged knowing glances, reflecting on the feedback. Finally, Michelle Carter spoke up again. "So it seems that more thoroughly," she commented. "But what about the fundamental systemic issues these changes focus on this airline? But the problem goes beyond your company. Are you willing to support broader reforms in the airline industry?" Hayes paused for a moment before nodding. "We're ready." he replied. This incident has highlighted that there is still much work to be done, not just here, but across the entire industry. We have been negotiating with other airlines to form an alliance to address these issues on a larger scale. Michelle Carter looked at him intently, her gaze wavering. We will keep that promise. She said, this issue is not just about damage control. It's definitely more than that. It leads to real transformation. Hayes nodded, his expression serious. He stated, I am committed to fixing this situation. The meeting lasted over an hour as the couple presented further recommendations while the airline team diligently took notes. The conclusion was a clear framework for upcoming changes that had been established. As Hayes and his team prepared to leave, he reached out his hand once more. Thank you for holding us accountable, he remarked. Your voice is incredibly valuable. David shook his hand but did not smile. This is not about us, he replied. The aim is to ensure that no one else has to go through this. After the airline team left, the couple stayed in the conference room to reflect on the meeting. Do you think they will follow through? David asked. Michelle Carter took a deep breath and confidently replied, we will make sure they do, and if not, we won't let them evade responsibility. Meanwhile, across the city, the airline had issued updates to the public, outlining the measures they were taking, including the changes discussed in the meeting. While some people commended the airline's openness, others remained skeptical, eager to know if the commitments would be fulfilled. In contrast, Emily Thompson was facing the repercussions of her actions. She learned that her suspension would be permanent and that her contract termination was in the final stages. Throughout the day, she spent time writing an apology letter, not to save her position, but to express her regret. That afternoon, the couple received a brief and straightforward email acknowledging the damage caused by her actions and affirming her determination to make amends. It was a reflection and a development. Michelle Carter read it thoughtfully before setting it aside. She noted that it couldn't change what had happened, but at least she had taken responsibility. David nodded in agreement. He replied, that's a step. Now, let's see if the airline follows through. As the day came to an end, the couple returned home, tired but still determined. The movement they had started was growing, and they understood that their struggle was far from over. However, for the first time, they felt real progress, tangible progress, and realized that their efforts had created something important. The days following the meeting marked the beginning of significant change, not just within the airline but across the entire aviation industry. The couple's open letter continued to spread widely, garnering support from advocacy groups, industry insiders, and the general public. The media published follow-up stories highlighting the specific actions the airline had committed to taking, while ensuring accountability regarding the timeline for implementation. The couple remained actively involved, meeting with various stakeholders to ensure that the commitments were fulfilled. Advocacy groups reached out to them for collaboration in broader efforts to address systemic bias across various fields. Michelle Carter spent many hours reviewing proposals and building strategies, while David focused on rallying a coalition of voices from minority communities to amplify the call for change. They turned their experience into a platform and were determined to carry out their mission. At the airline, CEO Michael Reynolds risked his reputation by committing to necessary reforms. Internal memos indicated a shift towards greater transparency within the company. Flight attendants, gate agents, and other staff began participating in mandatory training, focusing on maintaining professionalism and fairness in all interactions with customers. The airline's social media team continuously shared updates on their progress, a development that the public received with cautious optimism. Emily Thompson, who had been suspended and was now officially terminated, was at home observing these changes taking place. Her personal life had been turned upside down, and she struggled with the weight of her choices. Although public anger had subsided as the airline accepted responsibility, she understood that her reputation would never be fully restored. However, she was determined to turn this experience into a pivotal moment. She joined a local organization focused on raising awareness about unconscious bias, using her story to illustrate how snap judgments can cause lasting harm. Months later, the airline invited the couple to officially announce their new initiative. The policies had been implemented as the event took place at a major city airport, attended by the media and the public. The CEO took the stage to outline the measures the airline had implemented and announced new initiatives aimed at raising industry standards. When he invited the couple to share their thoughts, the room fell silent. Michelle Carter was the first to step up to the microphone, her voice calm and steady as she spoke to the audience. She noted that this was not just about a single incident. The issue was the system that allowed it to happen and the responsibility we all share, contributing to the transformation of that system. David said in a steady yet determined tone, "We did not initiate this to punish anyone. We started. This journey is because we believe that everyone can improve. Now, we have a shared responsibility to ensure that these changes last." The audience responded with applause. However, this couple remained calm, prioritizing impact over recognition. As they left the event, they paused to watch the planes take off and land through the airport window. Michelle Carter turned to David and remarked, "This is just the beginning." He nodded, his expression determined. They have ignited something that can't be ignored. Their actions have turned a personal injustice into a movement that resonates far beyond their individual experiences. The incident at the gate was painful, humiliating, and absurd. However, from that arose something much more important: accountability, reform, and a commitment to prevent anyone else from suffering as they once did. For the first time in months, Michelle Carter allowed herself to smile, not because the work was done, but because they had proven it was possible. Together, they walked toward the exit, ready to continue their journey, aware that the changes they had fought for were beginning to take place. If you like this story, please give it a thumbs up, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more content like this. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video. The story of a couple facing discrimination at the airport gate highlights lessons about fairness, accountability, and the impact of personal bias. Emily Thompson's actions, driven by a sense of wrongness, had serious consequences, proving that biased decisions can deeply harm not only individuals, but also their reputation of organizations. The calmness and determination of the couple in demanding accountability transformed a negative experience into a catalyst for systemic change, highlighting the power of collective voice and accountability in today's America. Where issues of racial equity and social responsibility are in the spotlight, this story reflects the urgent need to confront unconscious bias in daily interactions. Service industries, especially aviation, must prioritize sensitivity training and establish transparent processes for handling complaints. The actions of this couple align with movements like Black Lives Matter, advocating for systemic reform through constructive dialogue and public pressure. To apply this lesson, each individual needs to be self-aware of their biases and seek diversity training. Organizations should implement clear policies that encourage reporting incidents and ensure consequences for discriminatory behavior. As a community, using social media to raise awareness and demand accountability can drive change, ensuring that everyone is treated fairly, regardless of race or background.